and I guess from mine, whenever I went to a couple of weeks training like a professional athlete, one of the benefits was I could forget about work. Like usually I'd organize annual leave. I had the opportunity just to let that go. And all of a sudden that whole stress after a couple of days started to dissipate. I didn't have to think about it. That was a really noticeable advantage to training like an elite athlete. But from
Yep.
the people that you've had there so far, apart from what you've already mentioned, is there anything else that stands out to them about the way that professionals are training? Or is there anything that you can speak to on that, that a lot of people who haven't had the opportunity to train that way haven't been exposed to?
Yeah. Addressing the first part, running is not, it's not a fan sport in the way that, football is, and basketball and a lot of other sports, where most people who, watch the sport on television or go to arenas or stadiums to watch the sport, they don't also participate in it. But running obviously is very different, where it's more participatory, which is great. But not everyone who participates pays much attention to the elites. And for me, I always felt like, I had one foot in each realm, whereas as a student of the sport, I was really and a fan of the sport, I was paying a lot of attention to the elites. But, I was always, an amateur myself. And I thought, yeah, for whatever reason, I gave myself permission as an amateur athlete to do things like the pros. I felt like I don't have to be as gifted as they are to, just emulate them. And I felt that really just was a really enriching perspective, to have as a runner. And that's a big part of what I want to pass on. And that's why it's very important for me, even for those, some runners come here and they're geeks, they know the runners on NAZ Elite. They're excited to meet them and be around them. Others have no clue, but they get just as much benefit from the exposure, because they really are. There's just something about putting these slower, often older, often less experienced runners into contact. Sometimes I've had them doing basically the same workout in the same place at the same time as these, really, really fast, remarkable athletes. And they come away just lit up. They are inspired. Like they might have initially had trepidation. They're just going to show me up and remind me of how bad I am at running. But that is not the experience they have at all, where they just soak it up. And there's there's an inspirational sort of, emotional aspect to it, but there's also like a practical aspect where they really see how, professional these athletes are. Like, they're having fun, but they're also meticulous. They're also, methodical. They're approaching it very seriously, and that rubs off as well. So that gets to the second part of your question, which is like, what I've seen so far is, aside from people really appreciating the value of not doing a lot between workouts, and just really relaxing and letting that blood pressure come down. The other thing is like the attention to the small stuff. So like, the runners who come here, whether they like it or not, they're going to do pro style warm-ups, which have a lot more parts and take a lot longer than the warm-ups they rush through at home. They might even know basically how the pros do it, but they just, when no one's looking, they cut corners. But here, like, we do all that stuff. And, I've had, again, it's a small sample size because we've only been open a few weeks, but the runners who come through here, I've heard it a few times already. It's like, wow, I can't believe how good I feel. I can't believe how well my body is absorbing the work I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you're doing the little things like the pros